Mr. Speaker, today the government has launched a refreshed public-private partnership framework. I've been working on this policy in my role as Infrastructure Undersecretary, along with the Minister for Infrastructure, Minister Chris Bishop. Public-private partnerships, when done right, deliver great value for money, they deliver projects on time, and they also deliver fantastic whole-of-life asset outcomes for the public sector, for the taxpayers who pay for it. Contrast this with the way so many of our public assets have been left to run down over the past few decades, having been built new, opened with a politician cutting a ribbon, but with no thought given to the long-term maintenance and renewal of these assets. You only have to think about the leaky pipes and the overflowing wastewater networks around New Zealand to know that New Zealand might be okay at spending money on infrastructure, but incredibly poor at maintaining it. New Zealand is also amongst the top 10% of OECD countries for our spending on infrastructure, but in the bottom 10% in terms of getting a product actually delivering investment and infrastructure for our spend. One of the reasons that public-private partnerships are important to turn this around is because when the private sector has skin in the game, when they have to put money on the table, and when they have to finance a new piece of infrastructure, whether it's a school or a hospital or a road, and then maintain it for 25 years and hand it back to the government after 25 years, Duncan Webb says that will cost more. In fact, that reflects the true cost of operating and maintaining an asset. And we know it represents the true cost because the private sector has skin in the game. If they don't allow enough cost, they'll go broke, Dr. Duncan Webb. And that's the difference between New Zealand Labour's previously flawed approach to rejecting public-private partnerships, because they failed to recognise that an insufficient investment in the maintenance side of things can't make up for announcing new projects, building them over time, if ever, and over budget. You cannot possibly spend your way out of our infrastructure problem. Now, a few weeks ago, I was in Australia, and I visited with colleagues in the construction and infrastructure and financing sector, including with the Victorian Infrastructure Delivery Agency. And one thing they pointed out to me was it didn't matter whether they had a centre-right or a centre-left government, there was universal support, Dr. Duncan Webb, for the concept of private sector finance involved in the delivery of projects in their ongoing maintenance and operation in the form of public-private partnerships. That's because when it's important to transfer the right risks to the private sector, while the public sector keeps some that it makes more sense to own, like getting the planning permissions, when it makes sense to actually leverage private finance and make sure that they have some risk associated with their investment, so they want to manage the asset properly, then it doesn't matter what political stripe you are, it makes sense to make investments along those lines. And that's why I'm very proud to say that today this government has achieved cross-party support, unanimity in fact, to support the next generation and wave of public-private partnerships, because Labour's finance spokesperson Barbara Edmonds has signed on to the foreword of the public-private partnership policy framework to support that concept where it makes sense to invest in that way. Now, in Australia a few weeks ago, I visited a number of PPP schools, and what was remarkable about them is that even though they were up to 10 years old, they looked as good and as tidy as the day they opened. What the teachers told us in our visit, what the school managers told us, is that they don't have to worry about maintaining those facilities. They only need to turn up and deliver education and look after the children in their care. I was astounded by the construction workshops and all of those learning facilities which help keep particularly young men engaged in school right till they graduate out. That is only possible because a public-private partnership has committed to providing the highest quality facilities, maintaining them to make sure the equipment always operates and that the teachers can simply get on and teach. I'm proud to say that New Zealand is going ahead today with the next generation of PPPs. Mr Chair. Speaker.